What is going on, everyone? Welcome back into another episode of Rosscast. I'm Ross at Shy Sports Ross on all of the platforms. You guys can follow me. You can watch this on YouTube. You can listen on Spotify and Apple. You can even watch it on Spotify, which is interesting. We got a big one today. Bears got a big win over the Saints yesterday at home. Bulls start their season this week. And we have injury updates. We have jersey updates. Got quite a bit to get through today. So let's jump into it. Bears beat the Saints at home 26-14. It was an up and down game overall. I think Caleb looked shaky at times. The offense overall was out of sync at times, but they did keep the run game going, which we love to see. And then on the other side of the ball, Bears defense was lights out. They showed up for their coach, Dennis Allen. It was his first time playing against his former team. He used to be the head coach of the Saints. They fired him. So I'm sure that was a big storyline for him headed into the game. And you could see it in the way that the defense showed up and responded. You know, there were a couple of big plays that they gave up throughout the course of the game. You know, they had a 20-0 lead. It felt like they were going to go into halftime with that lead, but they gave up a score right before halftime. That was one of those moments. But after that, they only gave up one more touchdown for the rest of the game, and they had Spencer Rattler completely rattled. He finished the game with 4 turnovers overall, 3 picks, and a fumble. So all 4 takeaways from the Bears defense came at the hands of Rattler. But it wasn't just him. They couldn't get anything on the ground going. They only had, 44 yards of rushing offense. Rattler ended up getting to 233 passing, but he took 4 big sacks. His QB rating was abysmal. Bad day for the Saints offense. Bad season for the Saints, and maybe a little vindication for Dennis Allen. Maybe all the problems weren't his fault, you know. But like I had mentioned, Caleb was a bit up and down. He had an interception in the first half, which definitely had some of us scratching our heads, wondering, you know, why has he looked a little worse since the bye week when everything else on offense has kind of looked a little bit better. You know, the offensive line was a lot better last week, but kind of reverted to some of their old ways this week. Penalties, holding, false starts, drive killing penalties. But even with that, they still kept the run game going. Over 200 yards on the ground for the Bears, and a well-distributed run game too. It wasn't just DeAndre Swift, who did have 124 yards rushing, which is pretty impressive. But he didn't even have the longest run of the day. Monangai had a big 24-yard run. He finished the game with 81 yards on the ground overall. To illustrate the big leap that the Bears rush game has taken, I saw some people talking about the pre-bye week, post-bye week stats on Twitter today. So I went to look it up myself. Here's ESPN. You can see right now we're tied for 7th in the league for rush yards per game at 129.3. I went onto the Wayback Machine to see how far back we could look at stats from this season. So we can go back to October 1st and look at what the stats looked like through week 4. So prior to the bye week, the Bears were all the way down here at 102 rushing yards per game. And now just a few weeks later are in the top 10. So I think that speaks to the adjustments that the team is making. I think that speaks to the competency of the coaching staff, the fact that they know what needs to be fixed and they're making changes to address those things. And that is what gives me faith that they will figure out what's going on with Caleb and why he hasn't looked his best the last couple of weeks. I'm not hitting the panic button. I'm not going doom and gloom. Just hope he turns it up a little bit against a really good team next weekend. You know, Caleb had an up and down game, like I said. The O-line was inconsistent. They had some good drives. They had some bad drives. There were a couple of exchanges between the center and the quarterback that weren't clean. But if this is what Caleb looks like at his worst, honestly, I'll take it. We know that he has been better this season overall than he was last year. And the mistakes are going to be there. There's still going to be some things that he's going to have to learn. There's going to be development, still learning Ben Johnson's offense and getting comfortable in it in his first season. But I do think that if what we've seen, you know, if this is the floor for Caleb, I'm okay with that. You know, it's one thing to be actively throwing the game away, trying to win it in some ways, how Rattler was playing. Obviously, as a quarterback, you want to take some shots, you want to go downfield. But if that's not open for you and you don't have that and you feel like you're putting the ball in jeopardy by sending it down the field, then don't do that. And that's what Caleb was doing. He was being smart with the ball. There were some passes that it seemed like he airmailed. He was off target for some of those throws. Those are things that he owned up for and took accountability for in the post-game press conference. So it's not like he's unaware of those things. I'm sure Ben Johnson is quite aware of those things. And you've seen the development in the offensive line since the bye week. You've seen the development in the Bears defense week by week. They've gotten better each week, it seems like. Special teams, same kind of thing. First couple of weeks were a little shaky. They seem to have gotten better each week. So that is what gives me faith that, if Caleb is having a bad game, it's not because the system is failing. It's not because the scheme is failing. He had a bad game, and that's going to happen. But again, if this is bad for him, I'll take it, because you can win with a guy who isn't throwing the game away. You can win with a guy who is playing safe football. Maybe it's not going to win you the game, but that's not what the game plan called for yesterday against the Saints. There's going to be other situations. We have a big game coming up next week against the Ravens. Caleb is going to have to play a lot better for a game like that. Those are the examples. In a game like the Saints, yes, he can have a down game and we can still win. In a game like the Ravens, we are going to need him to step up. So I think we are going to learn a little bit more about Caleb's development and Ben Johnson's offense this weekend. The Ravens, they're coming off of their bye week, so they're coming back and getting the same kind of juice that we had, trying to get healthy. Roquan Smith was one of the guys that's been out. Lamar Jackson has been out. So we'll see if they get those guys back. And before we wrap up the Bears section, let's give a shout out to our guy, Jake Moody. Dude comes off the street, comes out of nowhere after being cut by the 49ers and carries our team through 2 weeks. Bears offense can't score in the red zone. Jake Moody comes through clutch time after time. He's only got one missed kick so far. Again, coming off of the street cold after being cut by the Niners, dude comes in. Bears offense really should buy this guy a Rolex for carrying so hard. Team gets into the red zone quite a few times over the past couple of weeks. They moved the ball down the field, but just couldn't finish those drives. And Moody was able to keep us alive despite that. So big win for the Bears. Another big game coming up this weekend. We're on a 4-game win streak. And let's keep it going, man. Let's keep streaking. Let's keep it alive. All right, moving on to the Chicago Bulls. We've actually got quite a bit of Bulls news today. We know that the team is opening their regular season this week, Wednesday, against the Pistons. Some injury news updates. Zach Collins is going to be out for at least a few weeks. He had wrist surgery, apparently bracing from a fall when he was trying to draw a charge. I know some people have thoughts on the charge and whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. I was pretty disappointed by the news just because I really like Zach Collins. I think Collins is the most well-rounded big that the Bulls have on the roster. Vooch might be a little better offensively. Smith might be a little better defensively. I think Collins is the happy medium between the two. So I was pretty disappointed by this news, especially for a team that has been rumored to be talking, to be thinking about trading Nikola Vucevic. I don't really know where we stand with that right now, but probably not going to happen anytime soon with Collins missing some time. So that was another consideration with that. Just a little disappointing. Hopefully he'll be back sooner rather than later. The other guy, Coby White, we know that he's been hurt for a bit. There was, again, some kind of swirling. That's how this stuff seems to go. Coby was being rumored that it was rumored that Coby might be back for the season opener on Wednesday. And then it seems like a few hours later, the Bulls were like, no. Coby's going to be reevaluated in 2 weeks while he comes back from that right calf strain. And I'm cool with the cautious approach, just knowing how important Coby is. And I want him to be around for the future. I am hopeful that he'll be around for a long time in Chicago. And part of that is keeping him healthy. Part of that is trying to get him to the end of the season where we can try to make a postseason run. And that's why I'm not going to freak out. It's frustrating. It's disappointing. We deal with injuries all the time with this team. But I will say, Ayo Dosunmu was looking so good in preseason. I think we're going to be okay. If Coby needs to take a couple more weeks, I think we're going to be okay. If Coby needs to take a couple more weeks, We do have a very good guard rotation. That is one of our strengths. And when he's back, he'll only make it better. The other Bulls news, new City Edition jerseys. Look at these. I love this. I absolutely love these. This team knows how to pull me back in. Every time I'm like, I don't know, maybe I should stop buying jerseys. Maybe I should stop buying merch. The Bulls are like, no. Check this shit out. For real though, check this shit out. Like this is really tight. If you're listening on Spotify and Apple, you're not watching, I would encourage you to just go search Bull City Edition and you'll see what I'm talking about. We got the powder blue on black with the red trim, the cursive script font. Oh man, I love it. It's a great combo of the old school and the new. We had those powder blue jerseys from a few years ago. We've kind of incorporated that into the City Edition a couple of times now, but we always love that classic cursive font. I think they did a very good job of marrying those two design ideas. I think it looks great. They're calling it a remix of the City Edition jersey from 2017-18, inspired by the Chicago flag, of course, with the stars on the side. You got the dope little sweet home. I love it. Looks great. So looking ahead to Wednesday against the Pistons, I think the Bulls have a really good chance here to start the season off on a good note at home. I had mentioned earlier, Ayo Dosunmu was looking really, really good in preseason. I think he's going to be a big component to this game. Okoro is going to be another name to watch in this game. I think defense is going to play a huge factor. We know the Bulls can score. We know they play with a fast tempo offense, but we need to reestablish some kind of defensive identity. Felt like kind of lost that last season. Very curious to see how the lineup shakes out, especially with Coby out. Pretty sure Ayo is going to be starting. Interested to see what the move is when Coby is back. I feel like Ayo lately has been playing too well to keep him on the bench. And I'm kind of curious what you guys think too. What if Ayo is too good to be a sixth man? You might have to trade one of Ayo or Coby in order to make room for the rest of your rotation. I don't know if you can start Giddey, Coby, and Ayo. Maybe because of how big Ayo plays, because he can defend multiple positions. Maybe you can play him as kind of like a small ball three, but then you're pushing Matas over to the 4. And I feel like most of us are in agreement that we want Matas to be more of a wing, more of a 3, rather than more of a 4. Basketball is pretty positionless, but if you're going to run a 3-guard lineup, you are kind of forcing your young, talented wing player to play more on the interior. Speaking of Matas, another huge storyline headed into game 1 is going to be watching Matas handle the ball, watching Matas have offensive sets designed around him, which is something that we didn't see last season because coming into the year, Matas wasn't even a starter. He was a rookie. Billy wasn't playing him. We're going to see a more deliberate effort to get Matas the ball. Obviously, a second-year player, you're going to want to see the development, but I also just think that having the ability now, knowing what he's capable of, having the time as a team together, you're able to form plays around him and create plays to his strengths. So I think that's the difference coming into his second year versus his rookie season, is like Billy Donovan now has had an opportunity to watch the tape from last year, watch the offseason tape from summer league and from preseason, and to now start to put those pieces together and, build the offense more around Matas, more around Josh Giddey, and building to their strengths. So I'm curious to see if there's any new wrinkles to the offense. I pointed out, I've made a couple of videos about some of the things we saw Matas bust out in preseason, some of the moves that he's been busting out. And those are on-ball moves. Those are dribble moves. Those are him with the ball in his hands, creating shots, creating space. And I'm very excited to watch him continue to take that next step and hopefully, ideally, fingers crossed, become a star in this league one day. So Bulls are looking for a hot start. I'd say the City Edition jerseys, it's a good way to kick it off. Hopefully we get Coby and Zach Collins back sooner rather than later. But that is everything that I had for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening, as always. Obviously, quiet time for baseball, but I'm not the biggest hockey person. I follow the Blackhawks, but I am not as versed in the sport and in the NHL as a league. Would love to talk some hockey, though. If anyone out there is interested in hopping on the podcast to talk some Blackhawks with me, let me know. Send me a tweet, send me a comment. Let me know. Maybe we could do something. That'd be fun. But I'm Ross again at Shy Sports Ross on all the platforms. Thank you guys for watching, listening, subscribing, all that fun stuff. And we will talk again very soon.